Hello, my name's Bryony. I'm a speech and language therapist here at Salt by the Sea, and I have the pleasure of working with a lot of neurodivergent kids, whether they are autistic or ADHD or dyspraxic. And so this means that thinking about how I can be affirming of neurodiverse identities is really important to my work. And if you're here, perhaps it's important to your work too, whether you're the parent of a neurodivergent child or you're a professional reflecting on your own practice. Welcome. We need to be having more of these conversations to dig into what can potentially be harmful about traditional ways of working and how we can learn to do better. Neurodiversity is a term used to explain the vast difference in brain types, which affects how you interact and perceive the world around you. We could really dig into the details and the quandaries around language and how we describe these things, but for now, let's just stick to Naomi Fisher's quote that all brains are different and that difference is not a disorder. So from a traditional speech and language therapy perspective, that very idea is challenging. The idea that this difference is not a disorder, because we were trained originally in a medical model which views the individual as having the problem, and that problem needs to be fixed by kind of working with or targeting those problems in the individual. So if we're thinking about something like autism and we're thinking about kind of social communication difficulties, then we might describe things like child interrupts others, they don't understand conversational turns, they don't understand social cues, or maybe they don't express their feelings, or perhaps they're too honest and they make others feel uncomfortable, or they're too detailed and they make others feel bored, or they're too rigid and they make others feel frustrated. With this kind of frame, we would focus therefore on teaching that child to do social interactions differently, teach them these kind of specific social skills, for example. But the problem with this is that ultimately we're teaching that child to mask their true nature and to perform behaviours that may feel genuinely uncomfortable for them. And the growing research is telling us that this kind of masking has a long-term negative impact on well-being and mental health and relationships into the future. To try and take the child's perspective, can you imagine being told that your natural way of doing things is just plain wrong? How that must chip away at you over time. There is another way of viewing this, which is inspired by the social model, which suggests that the problem doesn't lie with the individual, but more with the environment. And if we're thinking about social communication difficulties, we could quite rightly point out that people generally are often very vague and don't actually say what they mean, or perhaps they change schedules and plans a great deal, or they make judgments when other people are weird, or they misinterpret direct communication as rude, and perhaps they simply expect the child to handle far more than is fair for that child. This social frame acknowledges the real-life, messy reality of humans sharing space together. It focuses on how we can all negotiate and understand each other better, rather than this story that this group of people have got it right and this other group of people have got it wrong. I suspect you're in this for the same reason as me, which is ultimately to improve quality of life and well-being for others. And well-being comes down to having that sense of belonging, that you're able to make a valid contribution, that you're heard and accepted for who you genuinely are. And speech and language therapy can and should facilitate this. We can help children to understand their unique qualities and to value that, rather than feel like they have to hide their quirks and differences in order to be accepted. And I know that this sounds idealistic because we live in a world that is judgy, but also our individual choices and our daily actions are a vote for the kind of world that we want to live in, and that is not nothing. For me, this is at the root of being pro-neurodiversity, approaching things with a sense of radical acceptance, genuine joy, and curiosity for what that child needs in order to feel okay, and how we can support and facilitate that. What does this mean in practical terms? Here's my top 3 suggestions. Firstly, supporting self-awareness. This is about helping that individual to understand themselves better and to be able to tell other people what they need in order to be successful, what they need to simply feel comfortable. And this isn't just about helping that child to speak up and even understand what they need, but it's also about ensuring that the environment around them is safe and supportive so that they can practice doing that. Secondly, this is about facilitating shared understanding, because discussions of diversity need to include everyone. This isn't about the minority group having to explain and advocate themselves to the majority group. It's about all of us better understanding different neurotypes and negotiating what different people need. I'd like us all to get better at being able to speak up for what we need and finding a way to negotiate that within a group, which is a big challenge because sometimes our needs can be in conflict. Think about the child who needs to be able to fidget and move around in order to listen and focus, in a group with a child that needs quiet and no distractions in order to be able to listen and focus. How do we work that out together? It's a challenge, but it's not impossible, and it's worth us learning that skill early on, because that's a skill that we need when we're in any group throughout our entire life. Thirdly, it's about being clear about what we're expecting and why. We need to think really carefully about who our goals are ultimately for. If we think about the goal of good sitting and good looking, then we can think about how for some of our neurodivergent kids, that doesn't serve them at all. It doesn't facilitate their learning and growth because they may be using every ounce of their energy to sit still and to look at the teacher, such that then they lose what is actually being taught in the moment. It's not just our neurodivergent kids that need opportunities to practice and develop their communication skills. We all benefit from practice at sharing space together, being honest about our thoughts and really genuinely listening to each other so that we can share space comfortably and successfully. This is an evolving conversation. My own thoughts and my practice develops over time, hugely informed by listening to autistic individuals and having open, vulnerable discussions with my fellow species. So I'd be really interested to hear from you. What are the things that you're grappling with in your work or in your life when it comes to how we can be affirming of neurodiverse identities? And as always, this is how we get anywhere. Every tiny step that we take together is a step in the right direction. So I really appreciate you being here today. Thank you, and until next time, I'll see you around.